Hi everyone, my name is Habib Gaas. For those of you that don't know me, I am an Afar and a proud one at that. But I'm also a member of the Eritrean Afar National Congress, which is a political organization representing the interests of Afar traditional elders, political activists, Afar refugees in the wider diaspora, and other general interests concerning the Afar people of Eritrea. Now, the purpose of this talk on this platform here is basically for me to bring to your attention and raise awareness about the plight of my people, the Eritrean Afars, who are suffering, brutally I might add, at the hands of a tyrannical regime with genocidal intentions, unfortunately. But before I do that, I'm very much aware that a lot of you are not even aware of who the Afar people are. So just to give you some context, I'll provide some background as to who we are first before I continue with the rest of the discussion. So, who are the Afar people? The Afar people are an indigenous people of Eastern Africa. Our traditional homeland is divided between three separate nation states, namely Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Djibouti. And this is collectively known as the Afar Triangle. But the region I'm going to be talking about specifically is the home of the Eritrean Afars, which is known as Dankalia. And Dankalia is approximately 50,000 kilometers squared in size. It lies along the coastal region of Eritrea, so it's right next to the Red Sea, and it stretches from the northern tip of the Bori Peninsula near Massawa to the southern town of Rahaita, and everything in between. There's many historical kind of villages and ports and islands and many wonders of nature, which actually some of you may be aware of if you're keen viewers of nature documentaries as I am. You may have heard a reference to the Dankalia depression. It overlaps between the territories of Ethiopia and Eritrea as well. But anyway, it's a region of geological kind of interest. It's to do with the movement of tectonic plates, which in turn has caused the East African Rift Valley and the Horn of Africa. But anyway, that's where the region is, and it's where what it's named after, which is the home of the Eritrean Afar people, Dankalia. As to its people, the indigenous Afars, they are an incredibly resilient folk, highly self-sufficient, most of whom are actually engaged in traditional fishing in villages along the coast of the Red Sea, because fishing is the primary source of sustenance for our people. But we're also involved in nomadic pastoralism, animal husbandry, so we herd our cattle, camels, cows, goats, and other general livestock. And we also mine and trade in salt as well. And we've been doing all of this ever since time immemorial. So this huge territory of Dankalia, the land, the coastline, the sea waste, and its vast deserts contain or hold a vast amount of wealth, a tremendous amount of wealth, in fact. And this is in the form of untapped natural resources, such as I've already mentioned the salts, but it's, there are precious metals like zinc, copper, gold, and also various other minerals like potash, just to name a few. So as you can see, Dankalia lies along a very resource-rich coastal region of Eritrea. But not only that, it lies along a strategic one as well, because it is situated, in international shipping routes at the heart of the Red Sea, near Bab el-Mandeb, which is in close proximity to Yemen and Saudi Arabia. So for this reason, Dankalia presents a major geopolitical asset as it links Eritrea and the rest of Africa to the Middle East, and with that, other global partnerships and international security, aid, trade and economic development. So it's quite a key piece of territory because it's well connected to other parts. So because of this wealth in natural resources and the strategic importance of the location that we, the Eritrean Afars, occupy, the government of Eritrea has been engaged in a concerted effort of ethnic cleansing against the Eritrean Afars. And sadly, this isn't anything new. Ever since, Eritrea won its independence shortly after the civil war with Ethiopia in May of 1991, my people has been subjected to every form of degrading abuse in terms of, violence and general persecution that can be conceived of. And so much so, on the 8th of June 2016, the UN Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in Eritrea, and I have the report right here with me from the Special Rapporteur, stated, and I quote, There were grounds to believe that Eritrean officials had committed crimes against humanity in a widespread and systematic manner over the past 27 years. The Commission provided detailed evidence relating to specific crimes of enslavement, imprisonment, enforced disappearance, torture, reprisals, political assassinations, and other inhumane acts such as rape and murder in the form of extrajudicial killings. Notably, the Commission found that these crimes had been perpetrated against two of Eritrea's indigenous peoples, the Afar and the Kunama. As recently as June 2020, which is just a few months ago, the Special Rapporteur has also received information that since the exploitation of potash resources began in Kululi in 2017, Kululi is an Afar territory, the army has progressively cleared Afar pastoral communities from the area, end quote. So the military continues to intimidate and displace the Afar population from their own land. And according to these reports from the Afar villages around the territories of Kululi, they have gradually lost their means of survival because they have lost access to their grazing lands, they have lost access to their watering resources for their animals. And when they've lost these two key resources, their animals have perished. And when their animals perished, that's, one half of their means of subsistence, the other half being fishing, which is closed off. So they have been left with nothing, and as a consequence, entire communities have been displaced and crossed over into neighboring countries like Ethiopia, Sudan, etc. And neither the government of Eritrea or the mining companies that they're in partnership with, such as Dankalia Limited, which is an Australian mining company, have consulted with the Afar leadership or the Afar people about the natural resources that's being mined in their own lands. And there has been no acts of expropriation, no compensation paid or even offered for that matter, absolutely nothing. And I'm particularly disappointed with the Australian company because, they're from a democratic country. Most international companies, especially the good ones, have a code of ethics that they operate against, and clearly they're not doing that because they're trying to kind of get a quick buck, and they've put their profits at the forefront of it. But we're naming and shaming them today. It's Dankalia Limited, which is the Australian company. But yeah, they are simply taking from the Afar people that land that we have occupied since time immemorial, land that has been the very basis of our economy and means of subsistence, and essentially the very foundation of our way of life and culture. And this is what is so outrageous about it. And as a result of these violent persecutions, nearly, according to some estimates, and this is on the reverse and the kind of, relatively reserved side of things, so it could be a lot higher, nearly 200,000 people today have fled from the country, and many of them now are living as refugees in neighboring countries in Ethiopia and Sudan, etc., like I mentioned earlier. And they will continue to do so as long as the government of Eritrea continues to commit these, atrocities. But this is yet another troubling turn of events to add to a long list of torment. The Eritrean Afars that have endured this at the hands of a regime led by quite possibly the worst African dictator alive today, President Isaias Afwerki, and his authoritarian military junta, because it's not just a one-man, it is a man-one show, but it takes it's a collective effort within that junta. But yeah, it's they essentially want to develop Afar land and exploit its resources, but at the expense of its indigenous people, the Afars, which is nuts, and that's something that we are objecting to, quite loudly. So, what's more, in recent events, the Eritrean regime has taken advantage of the recent COVID-19 crisis to double down on its slow and insidious genocidal agenda, because this is its strategy, and I say slow for a reason, because it's not like the Rwandan genocide where it was immediate shock, horror, on the spot mass death type of genocide. This genocide is slow, it's painful, it's deliberate, it's strategic by its nature, but it's genocide nonetheless. Make no mistake, of that. So yeah, under the pretext of fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, the regime has introduced, really harsh draconian measures, much like other countries, locking everything down. But unlike other countries, it's deliberately withheld support for the indigenous Afar peoples, knowing that these two critical things, the land and the sea, are which we heavily depend on, have been inaccessible to us. So they haven't mitigated that with any kind of support, because as nomadic pastoralists and seafaring fishermen, the land and the sea is absolutely critical to us, and we don't have access to that. And as a consequence of this, there's a severe shortage of food, mass hunger. There's a lack of basic medical services, and when we've attempted to send aid, cobbling together everybody with charity organizations, etc. What's even worse is the government of Eritrea has confiscated these humanitarian cargoes. Even caravans of humanitarian food which we've sent there have been confiscated, and even the beast of burden, the camel, has not even been released to its owners. So it's incredible, and many have already died, which is the real tragedy of this. But we need to understand that this is the regime's deliberate inaction in terms of withholding aid, which is systematically inducing famine and starving the Afar population, which is part of its well-calculated measures historically of trying to force the Afar people, the indigenous Afars, from their land. So it is a state-sanctioned strategy of ethnic cleansing and forced displacement. And you may be wondering, what is the end goal? The end goal is basically to clear the region of the indigenous Afars and bring in settlers of their own ethnic makeup in order to achieve a policy of demographic change and maintain their power as a military dictatorship, and to keep that stranglehold on the country. That's what the bottom line is about. So it is incredibly frustrating, but we can only do our part, and injustice of this nature, we should not be silent, and all of us have a duty and obligation to speak up and raise as much awareness as we can. And on that note, you may be wondering, what can I do? What can we do to help? But the most important thing you can do is to raise as much awareness as possible. I'm not the only one communicating this tragedy that has befallen the Afar people on social media or anywhere. There are many people doing this. I'm just doing my part. Perhaps you can do the same. So if you can engage in similar activism, it can be as grand as marching in a peaceful protest, or it could be as simple as clicking and sharing an article or even a video of this nature on social media to raise this awareness. The other thing you can do is you can write to your MPs asking them to pressure the government of Eritrea. There is already a lot of discussions happening at the British Parliament regarding the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Eritrea. And so wherever you are in the world, please get in touch with your local political representative and write to them. If you want, we can even provide you with a draft letter or an email. All you have to do is just put your name and signature, and just to stand in solidarity with us. And if you do this, I want to thank you in advance, of course. But right now, the most immediate threat to the Eritrean Afars, is starvation, because like I said earlier, the traditional sources of food that we rely on, the grazing lands for our cattle and herds, and the sea with the fishing, they're no longer accessible. So we are in very, very dire need, and access to sufficient food is it's a basic human right, and it's actually enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other international legal instruments. So the UN World Food Programme and other international organizations are actually devoted to implementing this fundamental right to food security. So when you do contact your MPs, if you can ask them to lobby these institutions on our behalf, so that they can render the aid, they're actually mandated to do so. They must do this. That would be a big help. And because right now we're not able to send money, all these things are being confiscated. We're not even able to send food or medicines because the government just at the border confiscates that. And this is a big problem for our family members, and especially it's not. I have family that are affected. The Afars have a very intricate clan-based social system. So Any Afar, Eritrean Afar knows another Eritrean Afar that is in a lot of trouble in Eritrea, which is why, you know, the urgency is a lot closer to home than most people think it would be, because this is our flesh and blood. So with this in mind, I, as an Eritrean Afar, on behalf of Afars, implore this audience, those of you listening, international communities and other humanitarian organizations, to please save Dankalia and its indigenous people, the Afars. Thank you very much for listening.